You know what time it is? You know what time it is? It's time for Gym Full Guide. This time, it's for the advanced people. So if you've been going to gym for at least 2 years or more, I think it's safe to say that you are now officially an advanced gym bro. Congratulations. You are an advanced gym bro. Feel good about yourself. So, what are we going to be talking about in this full guide for advanced gym bros? Let me break it down. The danger of carbs, stimulus to fatigue ratio, emphasize the deep stretch, optimize your form, and lagging muscles. Those are the 5 things we're going to be talking about today in the Advanced Gym Bro Full Guide course. Free course. It's all free. It's on YouTube. No pay. You're welcome. So first we're going to be talking about the danger of carbs. So people defend carbs a lot. They say you need carbs for energy and energy and energy. But here's the thing. No, you don't. You don't need carbs. You can literally live without carbs. There have been thousands of people who eat full carnivore or keto, and those guys, they eat little to no carbs, and they actually live better than people who do eat carbs. And so it's a pretty safe conclusion to come to that you don't really need carbs. I've done it myself. I went to carnivore for a few days and I felt awesome. I was high on energy. I had no brain fog. That was a big one for me. I didn't get lethargic and foggy throughout the day, which I usually do get when I eat carbs. And so it was a really significant time for me because my work health has never been better. My work, this, has never been better. Just my performance in general, it was skyrocketed after I cut out carbs and full carnivore. So my source for my information is Dr. Anthony Chaffee, or Chaffee. I don't know. Forgive me. Please forgive me, Chaffee, doctor, whatever. This guy, the most jacked guy I've ever seen. That's a lie, but he's still pretty jacked. This guy, he preaches going full carnivore, and he talks about how carbs are actually quite dangerous to your long-term health. So, we're not going to be talking about health in general here, we're just going to be talking about how carbs can affect your gym performance and your recovery. So, cutting and bulking. Let's talk about that first. People often bulk by eating lots of food, even calories in a surplus, and they gain a lot of weight as a byproduct. But the thing is, you can avoid all of that, the whole weight gain stuff, by just not eating that many carbs. You can still eat a huge surplus, but if you keep the carbs down, you're not going to gain that much weight, if any. Like me, I don't think I've gained any weight in the past 1 year. I mean, I've gained a little bit of weight within like the past month, but for the entire year, the entire 2 years, I really haven't gained that much weight. And this is because I don't eat that many carbs. So if you just cut down on carbs, bulking and cutting, there's no real point to it because you don't gain weight, well, you don't gain fat, and therefore you don't need to cut. You don't need to go through the entire effort of eating so many calories and getting fat and feeling body dysmorphia, feeling insecure about your body because you're so fat now and you have to cut, and now you're low energy all the time and you just feel like shit. But you know, it's for the aesthetics, bro. Gotta look big, gotta get lean, gotta get that 6-pack. And then the cycle just repeats over and over when it's all just unnecessary. Cut down on carbs and you will notice a difference, how you just stop gaining as much fat as you used to. Less fat and more muscle. That's a thing too. When you cut down on carbs, you actually start gaining more muscle. Probably because you replace the carbs with lots of fats and protein, both of which are very essential to muscle growth. Carbs, not that much. Even though they are an energy source, they're not the most efficient. And so that's why they don't make you gain that much muscle. But trust me, when you go into carnivore, I don't know how it works. Other people say this about carnivore diet as well, is you just gain lots of muscle, assuming you go to the gym. If you don't go to the gym, you probably won't gain that much muscle. But if you do go to the gym and you start eating lots of meat, you will notice a difference. You'll gain so much more muscle. If you want to avoid the bulking and cutting cycle, then just try eating less carbs. Once you start eating less carbs, all that stuff just goes out the window and you can just eat whatever you want stress-free. Well, not whatever you want. Like, if you eat whatever you want, you probably need some carbs, so don't do that. Eat whatever you want in terms of protein and fats, but not carbs. And there's also the argument, like I said at the start, carbs are one of the major energy sources. They're the energy source our body uses primarily to function, I guess, whatever. And that's just because your body finds it easier to use carbs for energy than it does for fats and protein. Primarily fats. But that doesn't mean it's right. See, because when you eat lots of carbs, that is technically sugar. Carbs, when they go into your body, it gets turned into sugar. So when you eat around 200 grams of carbs per day, technically you're eating 200 grams of sugar per day. Because all that stuff turns into sugar. And then what happens is your body starts releasing insulin. I think we all know this. Unless you're young and dumb. Or just dumb. Your body starts releasing insulin, and here's the thing with insulin. It cuts out all access to your energy stores. So your fat, your glycogen, which is the sugar you've just built up from all the carbs. So how it works is the energy from the carbs, the glycogen, it goes into your muscles. But then once your muscles are all full, then the energy gets stored inside of, I don't know, some kind of storage system. And then what happens after that, when the insulin comes up, it cuts all your access to the energy you just stored up. The only energy you have now is what's inside your muscles. And that stuff does not last long. So once you run a few Ks, and now all of a sudden the energy in your body is just depleted. You've got nothing left. You're tired, brain fog, lethargic, you got nothing. When you start cutting down carbs, you keep your insulin low, all of a sudden you've got infinite energy. Your energy stores are open 24/7, and you're just constantly refilling yourself with energy even when you're supposed to be tired. You run a few Ks now and you don't break a sweat. Easy as heck, bro. But of course, it doesn't happen overnight. Your body doesn't adjust to the new deficiency in carbs that you have, so it takes a while to adjust. But just give it some time, cut down on carbs, see how you feel maybe after a month. Sometimes it takes a month. If not, maybe a week. Just try it out. See for yourself. Now we have stimulus to fatigue ratio. What is stimulus to fatigue ratio? When you pick out your exercises in the gym, there's a chance that some might be more tiring than they do actually stimulate the muscles. And then other exercises, they stimulate the muscles a ton, and by the end of the set, you don't actually feel that tired. You're not panting, trying to catch your breath like you do after deadlifts. But with stuff like maybe chest flies, your chest is burning, but you're not really that tired. With hypertrophy, when you're trying to build muscle as much as possible and as efficiently as possible, you want to keep the stimulus high, but the fatigue low. This is the stimulus to fatigue ratio. So an example might be deadlifts. When you do deadlifts, you feel very, very lightheaded and exhausted after a set. That is because the stimulus to fatigue ratio is very high in terms of fatigue. I'm not sure how it goes. I don't know if a high stimulus to fatigue ratio is high stimulus, low fatigue, or the other way around. Let me just Google it real quick. Okay. A high stimulus to fatigue ratio is high stimulus but low fatigue. So a low stimulus to fatigue ratio would be low stimulus but really high fatigue. at least compared to each other. So what we want to do to maximize and efficiently make lots of muscle, to tear those muscle fibers without going to failure prematurely via your cardiovascular system, you want to make sure that your stimulus to fatigue ratio is very high. And this is why I personally like to use machines or cables. With free weights, they're great for specific movements like the bench press or rows. I like doing rows. But with squats and deadlifts, the lifting the weight, it takes a lot of your spinal erector muscles. And it makes the exercise way more challenging than it needs to be. And there's always the imbalance effect, like how you're not as balanced with the weight. Sometimes the weight goes one way and you have to try and keep it still. You have to use a lot more muscles to keep the weight just in place when you, well, not in place, but stable. Stability, that's what I mean. Keeping the weight stable also takes a lot more effort than, let's say, with machines, when the stability is already done for you. With machines, you can rep that weight way easier than you do with free weights. Like if, for example, deadlifts were a machine, if there was a machine for deadlifts, there might be, but I haven't seen one yet, they'll be like OP. Machine deadlifts would be OP. You could stimulate a ton of muscle, because deadlifts, they do stimulate lots and lots of muscles. But the problem with them is that they make you too tired by the end of a set. And if you had a machine deadlift, it would take all the fatigue away and provide you with just a stimulus. That's OP. And the reason you want a high stimulus to fatigue ratio is because you don't want your cardiovascular system to go to failure before your muscles do. Because then you're not actually stimulating the muscle that much. You're not stimulating the muscle to its maximum potential, because the muscles aren't going to failure. Your cardiovascular system is. And that's not what you want. If you wanted to stimulate your cardiovascular system, you've done a few minutes of jogging on the treadmill. But no. You chose the weights. You chose the deadlifts and the squats and the bench press and all of that. You want to make sure it's your muscles going to failure and not the cardiovascular system. Stimulus to fatigue ratio is kind of an excuse to be lazy in the gym, because you do actually want your sets to be as easy as possible. In terms of fatigue, you want it to be as easy as possible. For your muscles, yeah, you want them to be burning. You want them to go through hell just to lift that last rep on the set. But with all the other stuff, the panting of breath, the lightheadedness, the desire to just go home and go to sleep, play video games, nah. We want the set to be as easy as possible, but still be hell on earth. If that makes sense. It makes sense, you get it. You're smart, you're a big brain, you're a big boy. You know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you're a bitch, you're stupid, you're dumb. You clearly have no right to watch my videos because you're so stupid. So stop right now. Click that like button, get out of here. So what you want to do to optimize your stimulus to fatigue ratio is, first, do your exercises. Let's say it's leg day, and you're doing squats first. And you notice when you do squats that you're not that stable or fit, you get out of breath really easily, and your cardiovascular system fails first, before your muscles, your legs do. This isn't ideal. So if that's the case, what you want to do is maybe go find another exercise that doesn't make you so fatigued so quickly. Me, for example, I don't do squats because they're too tiring. My cardiovascular system goes to failure before my legs do, so I don't usually do them. What I do instead is I go find the machine that makes it as easy to press the weight as possible. So the angled leg press is my favorite, because one, you use your legs to push the weight away from you. You're not pushing yourself away from the weight. When you push yourself away from the weight, even on the horizontal leg press, it still feels way more tiring than it needs to be. And so I just find myself out of breath after a set, which is not what I really want. But with the angled leg press, I still get out of breath a little bit. But the amount of stimulus I get in my muscles compared to that, it's a no-brainer. I feel great after my sets on angled leg press. They are my number one exercise for legs. Maybe not for you, because everyone's different, but for me personally, I get fatigued less when I get the angled leg press and way more burn in my legs. And so that's what you want to do with all your exercises. Or not all. Unless you really like the fatigue, or you're just doing it for the ego thing or whatever. I don't know what your goals are. But for most of your exercises, if you prioritize building and growing that muscle, you want to choose exercises that do the same for you. They burn the muscle, but don't leave you as tired after a set. Emphasizing the deep stretch. Now, if you don't already know, because I'm sure I've explained it a few times before, the deep stretch is very important when it comes to gaining muscle. The more times you can expose your muscles to that deep stretch while being under intense tension, the better. So with certain exercises like the bench press, your range of motion can be somewhat limited. This is because when you have a bar out in front of you, your chest is kind of the cap for how low you can go on the bench press, because once the bar reaches your chest, you can't go any lower. And that can be a bit problematic because you don't get to stretch your chest as much. Your arms can't go any more back. And so if you want to emphasize a deep stretch in some of your exercises, if not all of them, which is usually a good idea, you want to switch up your exercises a little bit. So with bench press, you don't necessarily have to do dumbbell bench press now, although you could, because that's still a good idea, because you get it. With dumbbells, you can bring your arms all the way back instead of just stopping at your chest because they're dumbbells. There's no line in between the dumbbells that just stop the weight as soon as it passes your chest. But with some barbells, my gym doesn't have this barbell, but I'm pretty sure it does exist. The barbell it's a straight barbell, except there's a giant curve at the middle. And you would understand how that would be better for the deep stretch. Because the curve, it allows you to pull your arms way more back towards the ground, assuming you're pushing up on the bench, like a normal bench presser. You can bring your arms way more back, and as a result, your chest becomes way more stretched, which in return will tear the muscles a lot more and bring you 2 times more gains. Do 2 times more gains with this sick curved barbell thing on bench press and get 2 times the gains. Free, no pay, except for the gym membership. Get now at some gym that's not mine. And so this is why sometimes, or a lot of the time actually, machines or cables are better compared to free weights. Because some machines, they help you achieve more of that deep stretch. Because like with bench press, like I said, the barbell limits your range of motion. But with machines, like let's say the chest press, you can adjust the range of motion setting, whatever it's called, to bring the handles way more back so that you get that deeper stretch. And then you can just rep that stuff, no worries. And it's probably even better than dumbbell bench press because the stability of the machine helps you as well, which is always better for hypertrophy. That's another tip. Don't do things that limit your stability unless you're just really, really stable. Like free weights, they're great if you're really stable. And if you're not stable, then yeah, sure, you can train yourself to be more stable if you really want to. But don't go around trying to squat on Bosu balls or whatever. Like, don't be like that. Don't be an idiot. If you feel more stable doing machines and you enjoy machines more, then by all means do machines. And then there's also stuff like lower raises. So with lower raises, you're also kind of limited in the sense that, one, when you hold the dumbbells and you go to your starting position for lower raises, which is your hands are by your sides, you can't really go past that. Like if you bring your dumbbell, let me just show you. So your hand, you're holding the dumbbell and this is
by your side, by your hips, right? And then you go like that. Pretend this is my shoulder. You want to emphasize a deep stretch, right? So if this is my shoulder, I want to stretch it more. And to do that, I need to go past my hips and just bring it up to my nuts or something. But you'd understand how that would be a bit stupid because gravity doesn't work that way. When you bring your lower raises, like, when you try and stretch your shoulders more with just normal dumbbell lower raises, it just doesn't work. Your hips or your legs, whatever, that's pretty much the cap for how much you can stretch. And then there's also the tension applied to the weights at the stretch part of the exercise. It's because of how gravity works. With gravity, it pulls down, right? So that means when you have your shoulder up like this is when the most tension is applied to your shoulder because your arms are being dragged down by gravity. But when your arms are already flat by your sides, there's no tension on your shoulders because gravity is already pulling down and your shoulder is facing down already. So there's almost no tension. And you lift it up a little bit. There's some tension, but not a lot. Pull up some more. There's a lot more tension now. But now the deep stretch is gone. And so that's why it's another case of switching to machines. Switching to machines or cables, in this case, cable lower raises, would be more beneficial for your deep stretch. Because not only do you get to keep the weight, like you can drag the weight past your hips or whatever, I don't know what to call it. You can stretch your shoulders more on the cable lower raises, but you also have more tension at the bottom of the exercise, the movement. And so that's why I think you can still do lower raises, but if you want to emphasize a deep stretch, then switching to cables is a really good idea. Just keep that in mind next time you do an exercise. Just think about, am I doing the deep stretch part of the movement? Am I emphasizing it? Am I going as far down as I could? It's like with the angled leg press. I like that machine a lot. I've always found that the cap for the machine is just really, really not good. Like, I don't get a stretch on my legs at all. It still hits my legs a lot, but it could do way better. And the way I fix that is by getting a yoga mat. I fold it in half and fold it in half again, and I just put that on the seat so that it lies behind my back. I'm not sitting on it. Well, I mean, technically I'm sitting on it because it's an angled leg press, but whatever. It's kind of like a cushion for my back, and it pushes me up the seat. And so that way, I have way more stretch because I'm not bringing the platform down lower, but I'm essentially more, it feels lower. I'm higher up on the seat, so it feels like the platform is being lowered lower when I do the exercise. When I do the negative part of the exercise, when I lower the weight. And therefore my quads get a much bigger stretch. So yeah, that's just some tips for if you want to emphasize the deep stretch part of a movement. Highly recommend for anyone who wants to really level up their hypertrophy.
Next we have optimizing your form. Now this is going to be a pretty short section of the video because there's not much to say about form. But a lot of mistakes I see with a lot of big guys or influencers who are usually big guys, they will preach this form of just throwing weight around without really controlling it. Like Sam Sulek, his stuff isn't bad, but his form is not ideal. What Sam Sulek does is, like, I'm not trying to call him out anything. If you want to copy that guy, go ahead, but I'm just saying, it's just not that ideal in terms of injury and in terms of hypertrophy, because you want to make those gains as efficiently as possible. What I see that he does is he will explosively lift the weight and then explosively drop the weight as well. There's not usually much control in the movement. And if there is control in the movement, it's usually in the concentric part of the movement where you lift the weight, and then he just all of a sudden drops the weight as soon as it reaches maximum range of motion, or peak contraction, whatever. And that's not best case scenario when it comes to form. What you want to do with your form is control the negative and pause at the bottom. That's the main two things. So how you should go about it is explosively lift weight the concentric part of a movement where you lift the weight, it's still pretty important, but not as important. You don't really need to spend that much time in the concentric phase of the lift because it's the least important compared to the others. Or second least important. Like the squeeze. I mean, I don't know how important the squeeze is compared to the concentric, but they're both the least important. But then there's drop the weight. You slowly drop the weight. You count maybe 2 seconds. You make sure you control that weight as it comes down. And then you pause at the bottom for 1 second. And then explosively lift again. You want to spend 1 second on the concentric. 2 seconds on the negative as you drop the weight. You want to control it. And then 1 second at the bottom. And then repeat. Ease peas. I call it the 1-2-1 method. 1 second up, 2 seconds down, 1 second at the bottom. It's pretty simple. So if you want to optimize your form and really reap those gains better than you might have been doing before, then I highly recommend the 1-2-1 method. Next up, we have lagging muscles. We've all been there. We go to the gym for a few months, maybe even a few years, and you just see this part of your body, this muscle group that you're not so happy with, that seems to be underdeveloped compared to your other muscles. Or maybe you're just really full of body dysmorphia and you think that your physique is shitter than it actually is, and so you start looking for signs that maybe your arms aren't as big as your chest, and so you think, oh yeah, my arms are too tiny, I gotta get giant arms, otherwise I'm a little bitch and no one will like me. When in reality, your arms are actually fine, which is my case. My arms, people tell me that they look fine, or at least people who don't go to the gym or are just really new to the gym tell me that my arms are humongous. So that's something to be wary of. But when I look at myself in the mirror and I look at my arms compared to the rest of my body, I do kind of notice that they look a bit small. Like my shoulders and my back make me look wide as hell. I stand to the side, I look at how thick I look, how muscular, juicy thickness I am. Then I look at my arms and I see just pain. Why are they so small? Why can't they be a little wider? They're messing everything up. That's not actually my thought pattern. I don't really mind it that much, but I would like it if my arms were just a little bit bigger, if you get what I mean. And in this section of the full course, the guide, I'm going to be talking about how you can combat that. How you can help certain muscle groups grow a bit faster. Chances are, if you're 2 or more years into the gym, you might know these methods already, but if not, then I'm going to be saying a lot of common stuff you might hear on the internet about how to fix lagging muscle groups or whatever. I still hope this helps in any way. If it does, let me know. Tell me in the comments, give me a like. So number 1 is add more volume to that muscle group. Let's say your triceps are a bit small. The first method is to just add more volume. So add more sets, or maybe train your triceps more every week. So instead of doing them twice per week, along with chest and shoulders, you could maybe train them 3 times a week on their own, or 1 extra tricep day on their own. You still do chest, shoulders, triceps 2 days a week, but then you also do a triceps day at the end of the week, if that makes sense. If you're doing push-pull legs, maybe you could do, this is not realistic, but this is just an example, chest, pull legs, and then triceps. The reason I say this is not realistic is because you're pretty much training 7 days a week now, with no rest days. So that's not recommended. At least have 1 rest day, and that can work to boost your tricep growth. You might not see tricep growth straight away, and this is like for all my tips. You're not going to see immediate growth right away. But if all of a sudden you notice that you're adding strength way faster to your tricep movements than your other movements, like let's say chest press or bench press, whatever, then there's a good chance that your triceps are now growing much faster than the rest of your body, than your chest at least. So if you notice that you're starting to add 3 reps to your tricep exercises instead of 2 reps, which is what you're adding to your chest exercises now, then that's a pretty good sign that your lagging muscles are catching up. Go you. You got this. Good job. That's what we like to see. And now, the second tip. Train that muscle group at the start of a workout. Now, I must warn you that if you do the muscle group at the start of a workout, the other muscle groups will start to lag behind a little bit. So, if you want to progress your other muscles the same as before, but isolate this one particular muscle group to grow faster, then this tip/method is not gonna work. Because when you train that specific muscle group at the start of a workout, it'll be really beneficial to that muscle group because it's a fresh day, you're just starting the workout, you're full of energy, you're not puffed out or anything. That muscle group is fresh and ready to go. Then afterwards, when you start doing chest, for this example, let's say you did triceps at the start of a workout. Now you're doing chest at the end of a workout. Your chest, there's a good chance that it might not actually get that much stimulation from the exercises anymore. Because once you train triceps at the start of a workout, almost every exercise that has tricep involvement in it turns into a tricep exercise. So we know that bench press has some tricep activation in it, but it primarily trains your chest. Now, since you've trained your tricep at the beginning of the workout, the bench press becomes a tricep focused movement. Your chest is not going to stimulate nearly as much as if you had just trained it first. If you had just trained or done bench press first. You might notice that your chest will lag a little bit after you start doing this. But it will grow your arms a ton if that's what you're going for. If you're trying to grow your triceps. Now, if you don't mind stagnating your chest a little bit, like you'll still keep the muscle and it will still grow somewhat, but just not as much as it used to. If you don't mind that, if you'd rather just grow your triceps or whatever muscle group you're trying to target to its fullest potential, then go for it. And this is why it works. Let's use the same example of training triceps at the beginning of a workout. When you train triceps at the beginning of a workout, it's pretty common knowledge that now your triceps will be exhausted for the rest of the workout session. And since your triceps are exhausted, they're fatigued, they go to failure much quicker now. So when you go and do bench press after all your tricep exercises, your triceps will be the first one to fail. Not your chest, your triceps. And this makes the bench press a lot more tricep focused now. It makes the entire workout more triceps focused. Unless you're doing shoulders. Because there's no tricep activation in lower raises. And there's also the cognitive fatigue or systemic fatigue side of things. We all have that feeling when we do some heavy compound lifts, and after that set, our body and our mind just becomes really tired. It becomes a bit difficult to think straight for a while, and sometimes you just want to lie there on that bench because you're a bit out of breath, your muscles or your whole body is just tired from that big compound movement set you just did. So it really tires you out. It drains your energy, and you only have a limited amount of energy per workout. And so since you're dedicating that energy to that singular muscle group at the start of a workout, well, you're going to make a lot more gains for that muscle group because you're putting so much energy into it. Your energy tanks are full, and it's all going into that one muscle group. When you used to do that muscle group at the end of a workout session, what would happen is you wouldn't go as hard on those exercises because your energy tanks were quite depleted, quite empty, because you spent so much time on the compound exercises before. And so by doing the exercise or the muscle groups that you're trying to target first, there's a lot more energy that you can now dedicate to that single muscle group. You can push way harder on the exercises and your performance is just much better. But then, of course, again, you'll have very limited energy for the other muscle groups you're doing on that same day, like chest and shoulders. Your chest and shoulders aren't going to have as much energy anymore because they were all spent on doing triceps. So if you want to grow your triceps a bit faster, or any other muscle group, your shoulders, your back, your legs, use those methods. 1, increase the volume, and 2, work out that muscle group first at the beginning of a workout session. That's it.